Alrighty guys, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to skin a mink. This is by no means the only way to do it. This is the way that I do it. So we have a nice big buck mink here. I've been saving him since February actually. I caught this giant mink here in a TS-85. Not sure how that happened, but I did. You guys can see, I mean, he's a big mink. Potentially the biggest one I've ever caught. So, about to find out. Big buck here. Start out, here's the knife I'll be using. Just a cheap little knife here. Got a good point on it. A good point for skinning mink to me is important. And then I have this little dog chain here. It's a lot lighter gauge than say your normal dog chain. I'm going to be using this lighter one. I find that it holds these smaller animals' feet a lot better. So we'll just dive right into it. I'm going to take my dog chain here and make myself a little loop. We're going to hang our mink up by 1 foot there. Just like that. Get him kind of opened up there. Well, that sun's really not doing me any favors here. I'm going to set something up quick here. We're going to block that sun and we'll get back to you guys. Alrighty, we got that straightened out there. I'm just going to take a fur comb here before I get started and kind of brush them out. A little bit of moisture in there. He's been sitting in the freezer all summer. Just now getting around to skinning him out. So, nice big mink here. First thing I like to do is I like to remove the front feet. I do that on my mink and on my muskrats. Just makes it a lot simpler later on. So I'm just going to find that joint, cut that foot off right there. And by the joint, I'm talking right around this bottom pad here. They kind of have their main pad, and then there's another little one there, and you'll feel kind of where that bends. You just kind of cut through there. Sometimes you might not hit it just right. You can just give it a twist too. Maybe not. We're gonna have to cut around here a little bit more. No big deal. Set my knife down so I don't cut myself on accident. Give that a twist. I just heard it break. Most of the time I can hit that joint just right. It didn't work out there. Doesn't work out every time. But now what we're going to do is we're going to essentially just take a cut right up here. You can see when I cut this, I'm going to go below the testicles and up to the other ankle. I'm almost making a perfectly straight line here. So we're going to start right at about the heel, maybe. Right at the heel. They don't particularly have very thick leather at all. So you kind of just get in there. You're going to work your knife down. Essentially just follow that thigh. You can see we're right below the testicles there. We're going to do a line straight up. You kind of want to hit that thigh cutting upwards, essentially in the same spot that you came down it on the other side. And I'll take that all the way up to where my chain is. You guys can see that? All the way up to where my chain is on that foot there. From there, I'm going to just cut around this leg. I find that starting from the inside and working out makes it to where I don't get a bunch of meat on the pelt, and that makes it easier to pull off there on these mink. Just cut around there. Trying to take it slower so you guys can kind of follow along. Through the back here, and that leg there is freed up. You guys can see we've made a cut all the way around that leg. That leg is freed up. So now we're going to come down to where we started our cut down here. We're going to do the same thing. Again, you can ring it on the outside part too if you want. I just like going on the inside to keep all that meat off the pelt. Makes it so we got to scrape off a lot less in the fleshing process. So we'll just work our way around here, about there. Kind of back by the Achilles. Here's the hardest part. I really don't want to get that Achilles on there because then it's going to want to roll when we're pulling that down. So there we go. both our ankles are freed up. Now, before I get both feet on this dog chain here, I like to open it up back by the tail and go around the vent. It's a spot to be careful in. Mink have glands very similar to like a skunk do. Very smelly, completely different smell. It's still very smelly. So you can see here we got our vent right there. We're going to essentially come down the middle of this tail and then cut a V shape around both sides, leaving the testicles and the vent on this mink. So we're going to go in, we're going to start our cut into this tail. Maybe. It's been a minute. Alright, so we got our, this is why a fine tip's so important on these mink, guys. We're going to start our incision there. Again, you want to keep your blade relatively shallow and tight up against the pelt in this area, because you can clip those glands in there and they are very smelly. There's one right there. I'll show you guys how to remove those glands here in a second. Fairly desirable by bait and lure makers. So you can see we've essentially come through here and then angled it over along the testicles there, made our cut. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll come to the top of the vent. We're just going to cut along that, like so. Careful not to clip that gland there. I squeezed a little bit out, I can smell it. And there we go. So now you guys can see, hopefully that shows up in the camera. We essentially made a V-shaped cut here, leaving only the testicles and the vent on there. So now what I like to do is just take my knife and get that tail opened up a little bit more, like so. And then we'll just start skinning out this mink. I like to free up one leg first. All you really got to do is where you made your cut around there, start grabbing. I'm going to have to make a little bit of a cut here. We might have some freezer burn going on too. This thing's been in the freezer a while. Just kind of free that up. Still pretty frozen actually, which is good. We're just going to free this ankle up like so. Just making shallow cuts there. That should hopefully free up our thigh. Now we're going to pull down, make a few small cuts here just to free this up. Boy, this boy here's got a lot of fat on him. As to be expected from a mink this size. We're just going to kind of keep working that down. Never get too far ahead of yourself, really. Don't be ashamed to make a bunch of cuts if you have to. Just make sure you're cutting towards the meat, not out towards the pelt. You can see right here, there's a little bit of fat here and there's some tendons. I like to usually free that up. And there we go. We have that side freed up. You guys can see we got it pulled down there, basically to where this tail is starting to come down with it. So we'll get this pulled down just a little bit more here. I like to get it to where I can fit my fingers under that tail, and you can see we've kind of opened up a little gap there, like so. Now, we'll hang him up by his other foot here and do the exact same thing. We're just going to free up around this ankle with a couple cuts. I'm definitely not afraid to free this up with a couple cuts, just so that meat, all that meat staying on that mink. That way I don't really got to worry too much about pulling a bunch of meat down when I'm pulling them. We're going to get our fingers on there, just kind of start working them down. Like so. Once you get one side freed up, usually the other one's relatively easy. Pull that down, and again, right here, once you get down to this part, this tuft of hair that you've left in your V tends to like to kind of get stuck up in there. There's normally a good fat pocket in there, so I'll just make a couple cuts in there. And these two red things right here, those are the glands, so we do not want to hit those if we can. Like to avoid them. Just going to keep cutting down here. You You can see I got a little bit of thigh meat on there. I'm going to cut that right there so I don't have to keep fighting that. Get her down a little bit more here. Got another tendon in there. There we go. Now I'm going to show you guys how to remove these glands. Essentially what you're going to do, you can see these two glands here right on the side of the vent and on the base of the tail. What I like to do is grab the top of this vent and lift that up. Hopefully you guys can see how I'm doing that and how that opens up to where you can cut underneath of those glands. You're going to run your knife. I like to run it at about a 45 towards the tail. I've found that that really allows me to not cut these glands most of the time. Kind of just make a couple cuts through there. I like to hit the sides. And then you'll see once you're free, and those glands are out. Uh-oh. I'll give you guys a look here. So those two little red balls there, that's the mink glands. Those are packed with smell. Very smelly. The way I learned that mink had glands when I skinned my first one is I laid them wide open, and man, I learned not to do that after that. So now we have both thighs freed up all the way down to the tail. Normally I can do this with my thumb. On a mink this big, I'm not so sure, but I'm just going to pull this down and work it free. And you can see it's starting to open up. I now have a gap underneath the tail. And I'm going to get my fingers in there, pull down, and normally there will be a little bit of fat on each side of the tail in here. I'm just going to make a couple cuts there, like so. That way we get it down to the meat. Get all that fat freed up off of that tail. Now, we're going to take our tail puller, just like I use for coons. It's the exact same one. We're going to put that around that tail. Hopefully pull that tailbone right out of there. You guys can see how I kind of do a pushing. I'm pushing the tail upward as I'm pulling downward. Makes that tail pop out pretty good. I don't use a tail stripper. I've broken a dozen of them now. I just tend to use my knife to split this tail. Essentially what you want to do is just cut down the middle of that tail. That opens that tail all up there. Got a little bit more to go. That tail's opened up. So now I will go ahead, lower it down a little bit for the camera, and I will hang this mink by both feet. I'm sure they make small little gambles for this or something. I personally don't have enough mink every year usually to justify buying special equipment to skin a mink. You can see this one's a male, so he's got a pecker in there. There is a market for these mink peckers, so I'm actually going to remove this. But you can see what I did is I freed that area up around that pecker. I'm just going to cut that free of the pelt. I'm going to remove it from this animal because that bone there has a market for it. So now we have this mink completely freed up. We've removed our front feet, and we can just start pulling this mink down. I'll raise it up to the camera here. Got it raised up. I like grabbing it by both thighs here and just starting to pull down. I might have to free it up a little bit. She's a little frozen. Oh, she's pulling good. They're very easy to pull. Once I get down here, I like to re-grip. Just keep pulling. Now you can see those arms are starting to pop out there. That's a good sign. That means we've gotten down here far enough to where we can stop, jam our thumbs. You see where that elbow joint is right here? Just jam our thumb in there and work that pelt away from there like so. I actually don't have my tool here to do, oh, nope, I do. Sometimes I'll use like a heavier flat screwdriver for these mink. I'm just gonna use my bar for my coons. This is a very big mink, so I think it'll probably work. Run it through there, pull that down, free up a gap to where I can get my fingers in there, and I'm gonna pull the leg bone up while pulling the pelt down, and since we removed those feet already, it should just pop right off, just like that. That's one leg free. We're going to go around, do the same thing to the other side. It's pretty important, especially if you're using a screwdriver, to free that up to where you know where your gap is. That way you don't spear a hole in your pelt. Get this bar ran through here maybe. Might be one of the fattiest mink I've ever skinned, to be completely honest with you. Get this bar. Notice how I'm working that bar upwards away from the pelt, not downwards towards where the pelt is. Free up a little hole there for my fingers. We're going to do the same pulling motion to get that foot out of there. Just like that. Now our arms are free. We can continue to pull this mink down to the head. I'm hoping that this head isn't too frozen yet. Guess we're about to find out. I'm gonna have to make a couple cuts here. Again, this is more of just a beginner thing, trying to show someone who's maybe never skinned a mink before, just the generics of how to skin one. So we're gonna skin down. And keep in mind, mink have relatively long necks. His head isn't until down here a ways, so you actually got to keep pulling here. Well, I should have let him thaw out another couple hours. I'll just skin him down here. Again, cutting straight at the meat when I am making cuts. That way I avoid cutting my pelt. We're getting close to the head now. One thing to remember with the mink, versus like a coon, where a coon's ears are more towards the top of its head, a mink ear tends to be relatively on the side of their head. I'll show you guys here in a second when we get to that point. You'll see the cartilage start to pop through. You can see there, we're getting to the top of the skull. A couple more cuts, just like so. Working him down. Should be getting close to our ears now. Yep. So here's one of our ears. That little white piece of cartilage that is sticking out right there, that is one of our ears on the side of this mink. So we're just going to cut directly into that. You can see now that ear is cut open. It's freed up. So we will go around to the other side, do the exact same thing. There's our ear, cut straight in. Free that ear up. Normally I can just pull it down, but this baby's half froze. So I'll just keep skinning around the head, like so. We'll be coming up on the eyes here soon. There's one of the eyes starting to pop there. You guys can see that little gap and indentation. That's our eye. That tends to be one of the trickier parts for beginners to do. So we're just going to keep skinning. So what we're going to do with this eye is we're going to go to the top. We're going to go to the top of where this thinner skin here around the eyeball. We're going to go to the top of where that starts kind of concaving in and turning black. And that'll allow us to capture that whole eye on that mink, just like that. You can see I made my cut to where everything around that eye, other than the eyeball itself, is on this pelt. And then I'm going to come down, I'm going to pop open. This is its mouth right here. This is popping open that jaw. Do the same thing on the other side. Cut that eye open. Cut that jaw free. Pull down. Then you'll have to make one more cut there to get those eye sockets free from the skull bone. Then just pull it down. I like to put my finger in the mouth. It tends to make it easier to get some leverage there. You can see some whiskers here. We'll just cut that there. Now we're getting close to our nose. Right towards the tip here, you'll start seeing the nose of this mink. So here, right here where you can see it's starting to pull, there's kind of a lighter white color in there. That's our nose. That's the cartilage around our nose. So we're just going to cut straight in and down, and that has freed up the top part of our mink. There's its nose, completely left on. Bottom lip doesn't matter. Just pull it off, just like so. Now we got us a nice mink pelt. Get them turned inside out here so you guys can see them. Maybe. My hands are too big for this. There we go. There's our nice skinned mink. Got a market for that skull, so we'll remove that here. Pretty easy to remove these. Just make a cut all the way around where that spine meets that head. Give it a twist and a pull, and there's our mink skull. So there you have it, guys. That is basically a beginner's tutorial on how to skin a mink. Pretty simple stuff. I tried to keep it relatively slow. We will be coming out with a mink fleshing video next. So if you're new to skinning mink, they're very easy to flesh too. If you skin it already, you might as well flesh that thing because it is fairly simple to do. There's not a whole lot to remove from these mink, which I'll be showing you guys in the next video. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and until next time.